you guys? Happy Wednesday. I got a lot of great feedback on last week's video, so I'm really excited to get back in and film this one for you guys. This case, you guys, is absolutely crazy. It blows my mind. I've been doing research on it all week, and it's like one turn of events takes place and you think you have the answer. You're like, oh, okay, this must have happened. Then another piece of evidence comes up and like throws this big curveball, and then you're like, okay, 10 seconds ago I was sure this happened, and now I'm sure this happened. And that cycle just continues throughout the rest of the case. Because of that, there are so many little pieces of evidence and little moving parts to this, so definitely pay attention as much as you can. Grab a snack. It's gonna be a bumpy ride while we get through this. So I actually brought up this case to a couple of my friends and family that I was gonna be doing my next WTF video on it, and a couple of them actually remembered when all of this was going down. So this case kind of took place in 2014. So it really wasn't that long ago, which is a whole nother kind of reason why it's crazy that it hasn't been solved yet. This whole story begins on March 15th, 2014, and that is when Dutch students Chris Kremer and Lisanne Froon boarded a plane from Amsterdam to Costa Rica. Lisanne was very athletic. She was a volleyball player. She was 6 foot. She was very sweet and kind of more of an introvert. She was more shy than her best friend Chris was. She was very eccentric, very outgoing, very extrovert. Both girls had just finished their studies at the University of Utrecht, and that's kind of where they met. So they both also worked at like a cafe near the school, and then they also lived in the same student housing together. So they're best friends. They just finished their studies, and they both decided, let's go to Panama together. They do some sightseeing around Panama, but also to volunteer at a local school. Back in Holland is where they kind of gathered money from friends and family in order to kind of help facilitate this trip for them. And I think that just speaks so many words about, you know, the type of women that Lisanne and Chris were. You know, they were going to Panama after finishing their degrees. They were so smart and so bright and wanted to help, you know, the world in so many ways. And I just think that that speaks mountains, you know, to the type of women that these girls were. And when the girls first got to Panama, they spent a bit of time in Bocas del Toro, where they kind of began to learn a little bit of Spanish, enjoyed the beach, food, and kind of just enjoyed themselves for the first couple days that they were there. Here they met 2 Dutch men who they spent a lot of time with. They went dancing, went to dinner, and just kind of got to know these 2 Dutch men. When Chris and Lisanne arrived in Boquete 2 weeks later, it soon turned out that their appointments had changed. So remember, Boquete is where they were going to help volunteer at a school, and they were going to learn Spanish and do some volunteer work for this organization. And it was pretty upsetting once they had finally arrived. The school said, hey, we're so sorry. We actually don't need you guys for another week. We're not ready yet. As you can imagine, this was very disappointing to the girls because this was pretty much the sole reason that they were going out here. Girls kind of texted their parents and were like, dang, like they don't need us for another week. You know, just kind of keeping their family in the loop. They were here in Panama, in Boquete, ready to go, and it was gonna be a week before they actually started the volunteer work. So the girls stayed with a local host family in Alto Boquete, which is situated on the south of Boquete, and they stayed there for 4 weeks, or their plan was to be there for 4 weeks. So at this time, the girls kind of weren't sure what they were gonna do all week, trying to stay positive and think about, okay, well, we have this whole extra week now. What should we do? Should we go on a few tours, go on some hikes, do some sightseeing, just soak up the sun for, you know, the week, and we'll get started on our adventure next week? The girls planned to do a hike on a local volcano, as well as view local coffee plantations and also take a tour at a strawberry farm. However, there was a day that week that they didn't have anything, and that was Tuesday. So on Tuesday, April 1st, 2014, the girls set out on a hike on the Pianista Trail. This trail is actually like known, it's famous for being an extremely hard trail that's very easy to get lost on. This hike was basically in the straight up jungle. I mean, it looks absolutely beautiful, and there's supposed to be lots of waterfalls and just beautiful scenery all around. The girls wrote on Facebook that they were planning on taking a walk around Botet and doing maybe a couple of small trail hikes. They also sent Chris's boyfriend, I don't know if it's Stefan or Steven, but they also sent him a text message to let him know that they were gonna go on this little trail hike on Tuesday. So it's apparent that Tuesday is the day that they had left to go on this hike. Both Lisanne and Chris wore light clothing that day, just shorts, a light kind of t-shirt, tank top, and they didn't really bring much with them other than a backpack. In the backpack there was a passport, some money, their phones, and a digital camera, and then I believe they did have one bottle of water. With all of that being said, they were dressed and packed for a short trip, and to them it kind of seems like they were just going on this trail hike, right? It was just gonna be a short kind of jaunt hike for them. To note is that before they left on this hike, some of the locals that knew the girls were like, hey, like, be careful, this trail is so easy to get lost in. They were basically warning them and saying, you know, people usually don't take this hike or this trail without a guide. Please stay close, don't go too far. And one of the locals even said, here, take our dog with you. And this dog's name is Blue. So the girls accepted the offer and took Blue, the local dog, with them on their hike. So here's when suspicion starts kind of arising. It had been hours since the girls had left, and this dog, Blue, returned home without the girls. Just, he found his way back home, and nobody knew where the girls were at this time. The host family began searching around the area and just kind of did like a preliminary search. Now, remember, the girls had only been gone for a few hours, so it wasn't like there was all of this panic and suspicion at this point. The host family simply was like, where are they? I think they should be back by now, and kind of did their due diligence of looking around and seeing if they could find the girls. So giving them the benefit of the doubt, the host family decided to return home and kind of wait until the evening to see if the girls would return. Something interesting is that Chris and Lisanne had actually already scheduled a tour through this exact hiking trail that they took on Tuesday. So I believe it was the very next day that they had this tour scheduled with a local tour guide. So a lot of people are kind of questioning or wondering why the girls left in the first place when they were going to be going on this tour tomorrow with a guide. At this point, the next day came and the girls never showed up to the scheduled tour, and that is kind of when people started getting very suspicious and worried. So the families of Chris and Lisanne haven't heard from their girls since April 1st, and you know, the girls were regularly checking in with them, letting them know what they were doing. Same with, you know, Chris's boyfriend. I texted them a couple times and just asking, hey, are you okay? I haven't heard from you. What's going on? How's it going down there? And neither one of the girls responded. When the parents still had not heard anything by April 6th, they decided to get some detectives from the Netherlands involved and head down to Panama. Together, police, dogs, and locals from all over the area began searching for the girls. They had searched the jungle, forest, whatever you want to call it, for 10 days at this point. Chris and Lisanne's parents also offered a reward of $30,000 for anyone who could bring any information forward to help find their daughters. However, even this did not bring any new information in. There has been so many lost hikers and people disappearing onto this trail specifically, and as soon as authorities get involved, search parties are sent out and these people are brought back home safely. So the fact that it has now been weeks and there is still zero sign, nothing, no evidence, no anything from where these girls are is, first of all, it's absolutely heartbreaking and terrifying for these families, but it's also just crazy. And not to mention that there are detectives and authorities from the Netherlands as well as from Panama. So here's where the first break happens. This happened about 10 weeks after Lisanne and Chris have gone missing, and a local woman from the surrounding villages brought forth a blue backpack. This woman is said to have found this backpack on the bank of a river near the village of Alto Romeo, which is a remote area that's about 17 kilometers away from the host home where these girls were staying. This is at least 14 hours walking distance away from where the girls were last seen. Something interesting to note is this woman said that she was absolutely certain that the backpack had not been there the day before. So, I mean, these are the locals who live in these villages. This woman, you know, has walked past this spot 3 or 4 times a day, possibly every single day for her life. You know, we don't know, but she said she was absolutely certain that the backpack wasn't there the day before, which... So at first, police kind of assumed that the backpack must have drifted down the river and ended up in this spot. However, this is like the first piece of evidence that is so crazy. Is this backpack, you guys, was in like pristine condition. It wasn't wet. It wasn't even really dirty. It had not looked like it had just sat in this rainy, dirty jungle for 10 weeks. Like, it had appeared on a riverbank and it was in perfect condition. Inside the backpack were 2 folded bras, 2 pairs of sunglasses, an empty water bottle, and both of the girls' cell phones, which were a Samsung Galaxy and an iPhone. The next massive piece of evidence found in this backpack was the Canon camera that the girls took with them. There was also Lisanne's passport, Chris's medical card, and $83. I'm looking down at my notes, you guys, and 83 American dollars. This backpack looks untouched. Nothing looks to be taken out of it. I mean, if there wasn't some kind, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if there was some kind of altercation to begin with another person, you know, I don't know, if it were me, I guess, which is super fucked up to think about, but I would have taken their phones, the $87. I probably would have been taking everything in this backpack, right? Like, the fact that this backpack just magically appears in pristine condition with all of the content still inside, looking untouched, is crazy. Soon after its discovery, a photo of the backpack kind of started circulating throughout the media, and this photo is just a photo of the backpack and all of its contents outside of the backpack. And it is said that the woman who found this backpack opened it, took all this shit out, and took photos and passed it on to the media and police to be helpful, I guess. I mean, if you are suspecting that you just found evidence for these missing girls, I wouldn't be touching shit. Like, I would not be doing that. Once this backpack kind of went under investigation by detectives, there were as many as 34 different fingerprints on this backpack. 34. And there were at least 6 different fingerprints on the girls' bras. So no updates were given by investigators regarding the fingerprints that they had found. It said that, you know, none of the fingerprints turned up anything. There was no DNA, nothing kind of in the system that matched with any of these fingerprints. So here you have this backpack with all of the girls' stuff in it, 34 fingerprints, 6 fingerprints on the bras, with no answers. Like, literally 0 answers as to how any of this is happening. So luckily, as I said, the phones were found in the backpack, and police and detectives started looking through the phones and trying to find any kind of data they possibly could to help find these girls. So data on the phone shows that right off the bat, in the first few hours of their hike, the girls were in trouble. Around 4:40 p.m., when it was still light outside, the girls had attempted to call emergency services. 10 minutes later, a second attempt was then made. The girls began by dialing 112, which was the Dutch emergency services line, as well as Panama's. The second attempt, they called 911, which was the obviously American emergency services. Now, from the research I did, calling any emergency services line should redirect to the local number. However, in this case, it did not. The call didn't go through. The girls didn't have enough service, and that is that. Like, nobody knows why the girls had attempted to call emergency services. After the call didn't go through, the girls both had switched their phones off, and then 14 hours later, the phones were turned back on and another attempt to call emergency services was made. The next couple of days, there were more and more attempts that the girls had made to call emergency services. 2 days later, so that would be on April 2nd, or wait, the next day, so April 2nd, there were 3 more calls made, and then both phones again were turned off. Something that I think is so freaking sad, but I wanted to throw it in here, is that there actually was a day that Lisanne's phone did connect to the 112 emergency service for 1 to 2 seconds before connection was lost. And this just devastates me so bad, because these girls had been calling emergency services so many times for multiple days, just trying so hard to get a connection. And that one spark of hope you get from the call actually going through, for it to be gone again in a matter of 1 to 2 seconds, is just absolutely devastating to me. After this last attempt to call emergency services, the phones again were switched off. To me, I believe that the girls were trying to conserve their phone batteries by turning them off and not using them until they absolutely had to make a 911 call. That's my opinion. It seems to be kind of the opinion of most people. However, there is still not really a reason to know if that's accurate or not. So between the 7th and 10th day, Chris's phone was not used or switched on again. So if there was any battery left, it had, been being saved during this time. Now, suddenly on day 11, Chris's phone was turned on. The phone was turned on for about 1 hour before it either had died or been switched off again. And this was the last time that the phone was switched on. And this is day 11, you guys. So if these girls had gotten lost, they are somehow surviving in this jungle, possibly on day 11. It is also worth noting that on the 6th day, there were multiple attempts to get into Chris's phone. So the wrong pin had been entered multiple times. Now I want to get into the digital camera findings, because you guys, there is so many crazy photographs that were taken and just so many stories and assumptions from these photographs. So kind of where the photos start getting eerie is that on April 8th, so about a week after the girls got lost, there were multiple photographs taken on this camera. Something very eerie is that these photographs were all taken in the middle of the night between 1 and 3 a.m. in the pitch-ass black jungle. There were 90 photographs taken in the span of 3 hours. This means on average, a photograph was taken every 2 minutes. So the families only released a few of these photographs taken, so the media does not have access to all 90 of these photos. However, the few that were taken, I want to say they were very telling, because they weren't in actuality. They were extremely odd and suspicious. The majority of these photographs were just taken with the flash on of the surrounding jungle areas. So most people believe, and I would believe this as well, is that it was so dark. And by the way, if the Panama jungle is not already pitch black at night, this was also this freaking week that these girls are out on this trail is a week where there was what's called a new moon, which means that the moon isn't really there in the sky. Like the light of the moon is not happening. I'm an idiot, you guys. I don't know how else to say that. So not only was it already pitch dark, but there was not even any light from the moon to help the girls see. So it's my assumption that the girls were taking these photos in order to see where they were going or to see what is surrounding them. And I cannot imagine how absolutely just terrified I would be if I was in this position, if I was in the freaking Panama jungle in the pitch ass black of night, lost, scared, not knowing where I'm at, running out of food, running out of water, and to freaking be sitting in the jungle in the pitch black and to like hear shit around you, not thinking there's gonna be I don't even know, like how absolutely terrifying is this? So it would not shock me that the girls were hearing things and trying to like take a photograph. And there's some people who think they were trying to use the flash to see. However, if anyone has taken a photo with the flash on, you know, like that shit blinds you. So I think it was more of take a photo and look at the camera and see what the photograph is. And to me, that's the most logical explanation of this. There is also a really eerie photograph taken of the back of Chris's head. There's a lot of people who have said that this picture looks like she has been injured. I look at this photograph, I'll insert it so you guys can see. I personally don't see blood or an injury or anything of the sort. Do I think it's interesting and kind of suspicious that she took a photograph of Chris's head? Yes. So do I think there could have been a possible injury where Chris was like, holy shit, take a picture of my head, like if she had fallen or something. And I do think that the photograph was intentionally taken of Chris's head to see if there was an injury. However, I'm not seeing anything in the photo that says that she was injured. That she wasn't injured. I'm saying that there's a lot of people going around saying that in this picture you can see blood and you can see that she had been hit, and I just don't see that. If you see that, great. But great. This next part that I'm going to discuss is, without a doubt, the craziest aspect of this case. And while that may be my own opinion, it is also been the opinion of all the podcasts I've listened to, all the articles I've read, all the YouTube videos I watched. Every single person can agree that this part makes absolute zero sense, is completely unexplainable, and is just, I mean, if things aren't already just mad chaos and you're just like, what the hell is happening? Just wait. So a local guide stumbled upon bone remains from the two girls. He has also found jean shorts and 2 different shoes along the river. Were said to have been found folded up on a rock next to the river, 14-hour walking distance from where the backpack was found. Now, I'm going to be looking down at my notes a lot. I'm sorry if that's annoying. The bone remnants were found several walking hours away, as well as further north. So at this point, it's apparent that the girls had gotten completely lost. I mean, they have spent hours upon days trying to make their way through this jungle. One of the shoes that had been found contained a foot still in the shoe. Now, the foot was still protected by the shoe, laced up. It did not look like the shoe had been taken off the foot. The foot was literally a cut off foot in a boot of one of the girls was wearing. So the cut of The foot was very clean and there was no blood on the shoe. So you literally find one of the girls' hiking boots with her foot still in it, been cut off with no blood. You guys. There had also been no signs of clawing, no signs that an animal had tried to get to this foot, nothing. In and around the same area that the foot and boot were found were 33 other bones that had belonged to both Lisanne and Chris. Now, of all these bones that were found, specifically Chris's bones alone were bleached. I cannot even tell you guys how much this makes absolutely no sense at all. There were samples taken from the soil that these bones were found in, and the soil contained no phosphorus. It contained no materials that would have been able to bleach Chris's bones. And not only that, but her bones were found in the same exact area as Lisanne's bones, and her bones were not bleached. It is my assumption and my understanding that yes, bones can be bleached. However, most of the time bones are bleached by a human. You guys can see like how frustrating this is and how much it just doesn't make any sense. And I don't know much about bone bleaching, but from the research that I've done, it's mostly used by people trying to hide and cover up a body because it can break down the bones quicker. And the fact that all of Chris's bones were bleached and Lisanne's weren't, and they were found in the exact same area of each other, is crazy. Another thing to note about this is that the foot that was found in the boot still, I know this is nasty, it still had meat and flesh on it. And all the rest of these other bones are completely clean. It does not add up. There's literally 3 completely different bone scenarios found in the same area. Like, how do you explain that? Another note that I kind of want to throw in here is that of these 33 bones that were found, one of them had been Chris's entire pelvic bone. And this pelvic bone had also, like I said, all of Chris's bones had been bleached. So where they're finding bits and pieces of leg bones, and things like that, you've got a freaking pelvic bone. I just wanted to throw that out there too, because that is, again, I feel like I'm so speechless during this whole video because it's just, what happened to these girls? So neither the Dutch or the Panamanian forensics teams could even provide a cause of death to the girls because the only remains found were these bones. The girls had never been found, nothing else of their belongings, their clothing. I know the jean shorts were found and the bras were found, but nothing else of the girls have ever been found. There's 0 trace of them. Nobody has any idea where they're at. Like, I'm not kidding you, nobody has a freaking clue. Just to kind of say more of how this case has been looked at so completely differently, like how the scenarios have been added up, is that the Panamanian detectives, forensics, their whole team said something happened to these girls. There was foul play involved. They were murdered. Like, they had no question in their minds. And then you have the Dutch authorities and detectives who said nothing happened. These girls went on this trail and very tragically got lost, ran out of food, were dehydrated, and possibly injured, and they fell to the elements of the jungle. That just kind of tells you that, like, there are 2 completely different sides to this story. There are people who believe that the girls were possibly sex trafficked, that there was foul play involved. At the beginning, of their trip, they were seen hanging out with those 2 Dutch men, as well as some other guys that had gone and talked to them, that they were dancing with, kind of clubbing with in the early parts of their trip. There's also this crazy mystery about the taxi driver. So I mentioned that the girls got picked up from their host family house and taken to where the trail kind of began for them. And you guys, this taxi driver was murdered, like not that far after. Like, and that could be just a crazy coincidence, right? I get that. I try to look at these from like the most level-headed I possibly can. But with all the other crazy elements of this case, like I wouldn't be shocked if it had something to do with the girls. Maybe he knew something. Maybe he had seen something and he was killed before he could say anything. I don't know. Maybe he was murdered and it was zero relation to the girl's disappearance. You don't know. So yes, there's the taxi driver. There's the boys that the girls were hanging out with. There's also the tour guide, okay? And I haven't really mentioned him yet because he was the tour guide that the girls had booked with to go on this hike on April 2nd, the day after they had decided to go themselves without the tour guide that they had booked for the next day. So many reviews about this tour guide being extremely creepy, being extremely inappropriate, especially towards European women who went on his tours. It's also noted that a lot of times that there was a man, you know, maybe with the family, or there was any kind of male involved, he would turn down the tours. So this tour guide only liked to take women, and there have been a few women that have came forward saying, you know, he was just crossing the line into creepy territory. He was asking me personal questions. He would bump into me and like brush my arm. Like this guy seemed like a total fucking creep. He was in and around the area, saw the girls hiking alone, met up with them. You know, oh, are you guys lost? Like, I'm the tour guide, like, let me help you. And then something happened. I don't know. There's zero evidence of this. There's zero evidence of anything going on. It is crazy. Panama is kind of more known for their sex trafficking. Had the girls' remains not been found, I do think this is a very plausible explanation and something to look into. However, if someone were sex trafficking the girls, they would have just kidnapped them and took them off. The fact that they had obviously died somewhere, you know, in this forest leads me to believe that that probably isn't the case for them. And of course, there is the possibility that the girls got lost and succumbed to the elements of the Panama jungle, which there's just as much and just as less amount of evidence for them getting lost as it is for them being murdered and for foul play to be involved. I mean, they started their hike on a sunny, beautiful day, and then the weather turned to complete shit, making the paths super muddy, making it hard for them to get around, making it cold. Not to mention that they had been out here. I mean, the last time the phone was turned on and off was 11 days into the hike. Whether this phone was turned on by Lisanne, whether it was turned on by their possible attackers, we don't know that. But we do know that the girls were in this jungle for that amount of time with little to no water, little to no food, and it is possible that they had gotten lost and fallen. There were a lot of, they're called monkey bridges that are very, very unsafe to walk across, that the kind of locals had created to kind of get around through this jungle. It's very possible that one of them could have fallen. I don't know. I mean, you have to take all of the different scenarios into account when you're discussing this, because that could very well have happened. It doesn't explain the bones. It doesn't really explain the backpack being found. It doesn't explain the backpack having 36 fingerprints on it. It doesn't explain that I think it was Lisanne's foot being looked like it was severed, like a clean cut with no blood. So possibly after she had died. I mean, is all the weird ass evidence that there is all points to possibly an altercation taking place. I kind of think a little bit of both happened. I think the girls 100% did get lost, which is absolutely terrifying. And then I think their luck continued and somehow there was a situation or a scenario that involved another person. I just don't know how or why or when. This case is so heartbreaking and absolutely so horrendous because of all of the unanswered questions that these family members and relatives and friends have for these girls. I don't think we will ever know what happened to them. I think that the evidence is so crazy and does not add up, and there's so many holes in the story, and there's just so many things that just don't make any sense in this case. And I think it's absolutely, it just breaks my heart to know that these families will probably never know what happened to their girls. And it also breaks my heart knowing what these girls went through. I mean, getting lost in the jungle? Are you freaking kidding me? I can't even, like, my stomach is in knots thinking about that. And then to have possibly stumbled upon some evil, disgusting people who are then going to now possibly do God knows what to these girls. Like, it's unimaginable and it's so awful. And I really hope that in the future this case is looked at differently, or somebody says something. Somebody has to know something, and unfortunately, I think that is the only hope and the only chance of ever finding out what happened to these girls. There's a lot more to this case that I don't want to specifically get into, but I will link the amazing, like, 7,000 page blog that I read where I got a lot of this information from, as well as the 2 podcasts that I listened to, as well as a couple YouTube videos, because I would love for you guys, like, when I first saw a YouTube video on this case, I went down a freaking rabbit hole. You know, I'll link all those things below so you guys can do some further research of your own, but I would love to know what your thoughts are. Do you think the girls got lost and succumbed to the jungle? Do you think there was foul play involved? What do you think? I am very interested to know. All right, you guys, that is the end of this video. Again, please subscribe if you are enjoying my channel and if you're enjoying the videos that I've been posting. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'm having so much fun making these, so it means so much to me. So please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you.